Well, sorry if I just spoiled that for you, but the Chiefs did end up beating the Bengals 23-20 in the AFC Championship game. Significantly better game than the Eagles and Niners game. This game was lived up to what it was propped up to be. Um, so I think before we kind of get into the game, we do have to talk about a lot of the controversy before the game. And by controversy, I mean the arrogance of the Cincinnati Bengals. So this all started, we had the mic'd up moment last week in Buffalo where the Bengals players were calling it Burrowhead Stadium. And that's because obviously the Bengals won last year, the AFC Championship game in Arrowhead Stadium. But the Bengals had also been, with Joe Burrow, had also been 3-0 against the Chiefs. So to this point, Joe Burrow was, had the best Patrick Mahomes. So there was the whole Burrowhead mantra, da da da. And I kind of had this philosophy in sports, and I think this goes for just life in general. It's a phrase that I think any person in a situation like this should live by, and it's called "Don't poke the bear." Don't poke the bear. Don't give people extra motivation to beat you. Don't give people a reason to work harder against you. That's never a good idea. Never a good idea, especially with a team like the Chiefs and a quarterback like Mahomes. Never a good idea to give them extra bulletin board material. So the Bengals players all week were very arrogant. You had Eli Apple, who I despise, talking all that shit on Twitter, da 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 da, right? Whatever. You had the freaking mayor of Cincinnati take the fake paternity test. Oh, is Joe Burrow Mahomes' dad? You can look that up on Twitter. It's actually insane that he did that. That's just whatever. Um, but yeah, just a lot of arrogance by the Bengals. And and to their credit, have they backed up a lot of their talk this year? Yes, they have. They've been one of the best teams. But talk your shit after you win the Super Bowl. Talk your shit after you win the Super Bowl, okay? Don't say nothing before that. You wanna win the Super Bowl in February, you got 6, 7 months until the next season. Talk all you want. But to talk before the AFC Championship game against a team that you barely beat last year and didn't even win the Super Bowl last year, it's kind of ballsy. I'll be honest. And then the other storyline going into the game was Mahomes and Travis Kelce's injuries. Mahomes obviously had the high ankle sprain that he suffered in the Jaguars game. How much was that going to limit him? How affected would his mobility be? And then Travis Kelce was a late add to the injury report with back spasms on, I believe, Thursday or Friday, and it was legitimately questionable if he was going to play. But we all knew he was going to play. Let's be honest here. Additionally, the Chiefs had some injury problems at receiver. Kadarius Toney got banged up. Some of Mahomes' other targets were banged up. But one of the guys that stepped up definitely in the AFC Championship game was MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. 6 catches, 116 yards, and a touchdown. That's big numbers. You need a guy to step up like that and have a big game in the AFC Championship game. Speaking of guys stepping up, I mean, was there any doubt that Mahomes wasn't going to ball out? 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, played great, made play after play after play. You could tell that the ankle was bothering him and that it did limit his mobility a little bit. But Mahomes, he's that guy. Mahomes is Superman. He's not going to let a high ankle sprain get in the way of him and going to another Super Bowl. So the Chiefs obviously, or I'm sorry, he was obviously going to play, and he was obviously going to play his best because the Super Bowl was on the line. Additionally, again, you're talking about, oh, Burrowhead. There's just that extra added motivation, which why the Bengals did that still is baffling to me. On the flip side, Joe Burrow, not as good, 270 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Not a terrible game by any sense, and I do think he played a little bit better than the numbers indicate. But those 2 interceptions were killer. Those were in my opinion the difference of the game. Like I said, this game was really back and forth. As you could tell, the game was close. There were a lot of times when I thought the Chiefs had it. There were a lot of times when I thought the Bengals had it. Back and forth, back and forth. This was the game that I thought, the NFC Championship would be a good back and forth match. But that's just not how it happened. But again, I did have an AFC Championship game, so we did get one really good conference battle. As I thought, the Chiefs kind of jumped out to an early lead. I believe they had a 7-point lead at halftime. And they were cooking for a little bit, and you kind of knew at halftime that the Bengals were going to adjust and that they were going to come out in the second half looking better. I mean, in the first half, the Chiefs' defensive line killed them. Like they were killing them. I think they had 4 or 5 sacks just in the first half alone. So the Bengals definitely need to do some adjusting, and they did. They definitely did. They adjusted their offensive scheme. Joe Burrow, was able to get some passes out, to get some big completions on the field, and everything like that. But I do want to talk about the difference in the game. It was turnovers and penalties. Um, for the Bengals had 3 turnovers. Chiefs only had 1 on that weird kind of Patrick Mahomes fumble thing. And like I said, the Bengals had 3 turnovers, 2 of Joe Burrow's interceptions. It's really hard to beat Kansas City in the playoffs when you have 2 more turnovers than them. You can't give them 2 more possessions. That's what the Bengals did. But I think the real kicker is the penalties for Cincinnati. Extending Kansas City drives, extending their momentum that they had built up. That 3rd and 9 sequence at the end of the game was insane. You had people saying that it was rigged, whatever. But 9 penalties for 71 yards. We can sit here and blame the refs if we want, but 9 penalties. That's a lot of penalties. That's a lot of penalties. That's a lot of yards. If you'll notice, as I've said in the segment about the NFC Championship game, both the Bengals and 49ers both had significantly more penalties both had significantly more penalties and 2 or more turnovers than the other team. That's not winning football. That's not winning football to have more turnovers, more penalties, right? So that's part of the reason why the Bengals and the 49ers ended up losing. But I would be remiss to not mention the biggest penalty of the season, the play where Patrick Mahomes was running out of bounds. Looked like he was, just going to get a few more yards, and then gets pushed. 15-yard penalty. The Bengals guy was obviously distraught, very upset. Bengals get Cincinnati. Pause. The Chiefs get an additional 15 yards. Harrison Buckner nails the field goal. Chiefs go to the Super Bowl. There's just a few seconds left after that. Sometimes games just come down to that. And I see a lot of people saying that, refs shouldn't decide the game. Well, the ref didn't decide the game. I think that linebacker decided the game. And, you can't be stupid in big spots. And that was a stupid penalty. When that happens, if you're running by Mahomes, you put your hands up, you try not to bump into him, and you don't do nothing. You don't push him. We can all be honest and say that the league is an offensive league. The penalties are almost always going to favor the offensive player, especially a face of the league like Mahomes. You have to know that. Am I saying the penalty was maybe ticky-tacky? You could argue, but at the same time, you have to have enough smarts to know just, hey, hands off, man. Don't touch him. Don't do nothing. Nothing good was going to come from you pushing him. Nothing good was going to happen. Maybe you prevent him getting a yard, right? It's not worth the 15 yards that you're going to give up by getting that penalty. So just a dumb move, honestly. I'm not gonna kill the guy. He was very distraught about it, so I'm not gonna dig his grave even more. You had people saying the NFL's rigged, like I said on Twitter, and that happens all the time. I don't really put in much stock into that at all. But I will say, going to the Bengals now. Joe Burrow and the Bengals have proven by their 3-1 record and playing every game close that they are a competent foil to the Chiefs. We're all talking about, the Chiefs going to run the AFC. They're going to have to get past the Bengals every year. And not that I'm saying the Bengals are better, that the Joe Burrow is better, but they're not backing down. Like they'll play the Chiefs tough. So I think Burrow and Mahomes is going to be a great matchup, a great quarterback matchup in the AFC going forward for a long time. Very excited to see how that goes. Hopefully Burrow gets a Super Bowl as well. I would like to see Joe Burrow win the Super Bowl. I like Joe Burrow. I'm sure every girl in America would like to see Joe Burrow win the Super Bowl because that's all their husbands. But yeah, so the Bengals, they do got some guys to pay in this offseason like T. Higgins and Jesse Bates, but I think that'll take care of itself. So I'm not too worried if I was to be a Bengals fan. Now going on to the Chiefs. Listen, this is Mahomes' 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years. The dude, I heard on watching the Nick Wright show this week that the AFC Championship game should be renamed the Arrowhead Invitational. And while that is slightly pompous, I don't necessarily totally disagree with that. Mahomes, every year as a starter, has hosted the AFC Championship game, which I don't believe had ever been done from the Kansas City Chiefs franchise. And Mahomes has done it 5 times in a row. What does that tell you about Mahomes? I've been on record multiple times saying that Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. I am not changed on that stance. I also think that he will and he can become the greatest quarterback of all time, over Tom Brady. I mean, this is his third Super Bowl. He has a chance to have two Super Bowls in his first 5 years. That puts him on fantastic pace. And I understand Super Bowls aren't everything. Super Bowls aren't the moniker for how great you are as a quarterback, or else, Dan Marino wouldn't be a Hall of Famer, and Trent Dilfer wouldn't be Trent Dilfer. So I understand Super Bowls aren't everything, but Super Bowls help, and they do. And having another one would be great for Mahomes' legacy. But I'm not going to play is he on pace for the GOAT? I'm not going to play that game just yet. I'm going to watch the Super Bowl. I'm going to see what happens. Then I'll kind of further analyze it. So a couple of things I want to say about this Super Bowl that make it very interesting for me. Again, like I said, Mahomes maybe could get his second title, second MVP. That would be great as well. But I believe, as I've said previously, that Mahomes is going to win the MVP award this year. Will he be the first regular season MVP award winner to Super Bowl champion in the same year since Kurt Warner? Because there's kind of been a curse. You've had a lot of MVPs in the regular season lose the Super Bowl, like Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, a lot of those guys. So we'll see. Peyton Manning did it in 2013. So we'll see if he is cursed like those other guys, or if he can go ahead and break that curse and become the double crown. I think of the most interesting part of this Super Bowl from a storyline perspective is Andy Reid. Andy Reid coaching in the Super Bowl against his former team. Now, if you guys remember, Andy Reid was fired in Philadelphia because he couldn't take that next step and consistently win big playoff games and consistently go to the Super Bowl. He did go to one Super Bowl with the Eagles. They got their asses blown out by the Patriots. So kind of ironic that then when he was gone, the Eagles ended up winning the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And then obviously Andy Reid has been fantastic with the Chiefs. He's won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs. He broke his career stump in the playoffs and won that Super Bowl with Mahomes against the 49ers. And then obviously his team won the Super Bowl in 2017, coming back in this year. So it's kind of, for Andy Reid, this has to be a very surreal moment. His old team versus his new team. Obviously, you got the battle of the Kelsey brothers, Jason Kelsey, who's the center for the Eagles, and Travis Kelsey, who was the tight end for the Chiefs. You guys knew that. Jason was coached by Andy Reid, so Jason is also going against his old coach. And I think, to see the brothers in the Super Bowl is going to be great. I saw a tweet. Jason Kelsey had tweeted, "I'm ending my Chiefs fandom today," or something, like, just so funny. Like, what a moment for those guys, and what a moment for their parents. I mean, how cool would that be to have two sons playing in the Super Bowl on opposite teams? Then again, it's like, who do you root for? Do you go like what the McCourty parents did with the halfway jersey? Like, what's kind of the move there? So, pretty funny. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to their podcast, because I'm a frequent listener of their podcast, and their podcast is awesome. They give a lot of great insight. They tell a lot of funny stories. They are just great personalities. So to hear them now be against each other in the Super Bowl, because the Chiefs and the Eagles, they haven't played each other this year, right? Obviously they didn't play each other in the playoffs, but to hear them now get ready for the Super Bowl, I mean, that's great. I mean, their podcast that they're going to make before the Super Bowl, if they make one, or before or after the Super Bowl, whatever the next episode they make, it's going to crush. It's going to be one of the greatest podcast episodes ever. I actually just put this morning when I was doing my prep for this episode, I went into the channel, I put my notifications on for their video so I could see it at first, which is a great reminder that if you are enjoying this video, you should put your notifications on for me so you don't miss any of my videos. But I put my notifications on because I want to watch the episode as soon as it drops. I want to watch that episode literally as soon as it drops. So very, very excited for that. And I can't wait to see what happens in the Super Bowl. I'm very excited for a good game. I'm going to save my predictions. I'm going to save my analysis. I'm going to save all that. I'm just going to focus on the NFC AFC Championship game today. But very, very excited for the Super Bowl. Like I said earlier in this video, I was right. My prediction was Chiefs Eagles for the Super Bowl, and I was right on that. So I was going back and forth actually with the Bills or the Chiefs, but I did lean Chiefs because Mahomes is just that guy. So very happy about that. But yeah, so that was kind of the AFC and NFC Championship Game weekend. We have one more game of football and then 6 to 7 months of nothing, which is very sad. However, I will let you know that I will be making videos throughout the off season. I'll be making draft content. I'll be making content, prediction stuff for next year. I'll be making everything. I'll be making any videos on any news that drops. We do look like we have a big off season in terms of the trade, in terms of the draft. So make sure to stay tuned for that. I'll be making sure to get you guys a lot of content this off season, and then obviously going into next season, I'll be making as much content, recapping the games, everything as much as I can. So